motivation and volition, which increases its capacity to exert control over itself in interaction with its environment that it is motivated actively to explore. Through its intense and spontaneous activity, constantly projecting representations onto the world as it tests its environment, the brain is a creatively narrative organ motivated by a continuous process of narration, spinning its own neuronal tale. At some moment in the mother's womb, the infant brain begins the tale that will in due course develop into the neuronal history of its entire life. It seems likely that consciousness evolved gradually, and I am here suggesting that the brain awoke when neuronal complexity reached a stage where values, emotions, and preferences emerged. In other words, emotions made matter awaken. The evolutionary connection between consciousness and cerebral emotionality is highly relevant to neuroethics. Without emotions, there would be no morality. Our different forms of morality are developed systems of values enabling us to function in our physical, social, and cultural environments, and from an ethical point of view, it is relevant to know that neuronal processes of evaluation and the emotionality that these involve are fundamental characteristics of our brains. It will also be important for neuroethics to gain an increasing understanding of the mechanisms that underlie emotions. The sciences of mind suffered from severe psychophobia until late in the 20th century, and it is perfectly legitimate not to want neuroethics to cross the same desert. The doctrines of behaviorism, wrote Arthur Koestler, invaded psychology like a virus, which first causes convulsions and slowly paralyzes the victim. Once paralyzed, naive eliminativism and naive cognitivism became all the more difficult to withstand. One eliminated the mind, the other emotions, and the brain from their pursuits, and the result was, of course, seriously lopsided. I consider an interesting study of psychology the question why any thinking being would want to reduce its own mind to a behavioristic slot machine, or to any machine, organic or otherwise. Why would anyone want to conceive minds without emotions? Considering this from a critical angle, there seems to be a streak of self-castration here. As a species, human beings are intensely emotional, highly conscious beings, and yet have spent so much time and effort rejecting these very characteristics, expulsing them from science, instead of striving genuinely to understand and gain control over them. On the other hand, this apparently absurd expulsion of consciousness and emotions has also been motivated by a far more intelligent rejection of uncontrolled ideas and passions that, historically, have caused enormous harm through notably religious fervor or political fanaticism. The scientific situation today has evolved considerably from what it was a century, half a century, or even a decade ago. Mind science is far less psychophobic, if at all, and radical eliminativism with respect to consciousness has lost most of the ground it once possessed. Modern neuroscience is in important ways and measures non-eliminativist. It neither denies the existence of mind, conscious or non-conscious, nor does it deny that consciousness is an important and relevant object of scientific study, nor does it presume to explain subjective experience without the use of self-reflection. The image of the brain that some contemporary neuroscientists offer is as far from behaviorism or the mind-machine model as it is from the religious notions of an immaterial soul. I have here tried to show how scientific theories about human nature and mind in the 19th and 20th centuries were occasionally caught in two major traps, ideological hijacking and psychophobia, in the form of naive eliminativism and naive cognitivism. I have also suggested that in order to avoid repeating these mistakes, neuroethics needs to build on the sound scientific and philosophical foundations of informed materialism, that adopts an evolutionary view of consciousness as an irreducible part of biological reality, an evolved function of the brain and a suitable object of scientific study, acknowledges that adequate understanding of subjective experience must take both subjective information obtained by self-reflection and objective information obtained from anatomical observations and measurements into account, and depicts the brain as a plastic, projective, and narrative organ evolved in socio-cultural biological symbiosis, positing emotion as the evolutionary hallmark of consciousness. Emotions made matter awaken and enabled it to develop a dynamic, flexible, and open mind, capable of moral judgment. The capacity for emotionally motivated evaluative selections are what distinguish the conscious organism from the automatically functioning machine. And herein lies the seed of morality. As depicted by informed materialism, the neuronal person is indeed awake in the deepest sense of the word. I think that is an image with which most of us can feel at ease. We now need to integrate it more deeply in our worldviews, self-conceptions, and social structures than has hitherto been done. And I suggest that the informed materialist view of the brain may indeed provide a fruitful theoretical framework for neuroethics through its high explanatory value in regard